Right, so I'm talking about disinformation. So there is an idea which is changing the world, everyone. It really is. Misinformation, disinformation. We've got different words for it: coordinated, inauthentic behaviour, information warfare. That new emerging tradecraft, which we often see crop up in elections, we see it with big global ideas, is completely changing the information environment as we see it. Incredibly powerful, often very hidden. We desperately, both in civic society, academics, researchers, and the platforms themselves, of course, really need to know when this is happening, why, who is responsible, and what we can do to respond to it. That is desperately important. So that's what I'm talking about today. This is actually going to be a 4 minutes on research methodology on how to spot information warfare when it occurs. The underlying technology base for this is one that, for our horrible sins, and Sage will know this, we've been building for about 10 years now, called Method 52. There's thumbs up being thrown from the physical room, which hasn't got any prettier since when you all saw it. It still looks the same. Modules connect together, some of them collecting data, some of them analyzing it. The most important thing really about this technology is that it basically allows us, whenever a new interesting thing pops up in natural language processing or text analytics, our developers cleverly develop it and put it as new components into Method 52. So we try and stay abreast of what's happening in data science. And that has, for 5 years now, been used to build a thing that we call Beam. We've been very quiet about it. This is one of the first times that I've publicly spoken about it. But it's basically, in its logical form, looks a lot like this. A series of yellow rectangles on a screen. When you use Beam, the first thing you do is you use a whole series of architectures in Method 52 to basically reach out across the internet and collect loads of data, usually either account or language-based collections from as many different platforms as we can possibly get. So you've got Instagram and Reddit and YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, thank you very much, CrowdTangle, and websites and Getter and PeerTube and the fascist alt tech space and all the rest of it. And we basically turn that into a single canonical format, which the data scientists will regard to be quite a major achievement and no one else ever cares about. And that becomes a series of accounts and messages in the middle. Right, and like what you have to understand is that our researchers basically pop around this map like basically a series of analytical avenues bouncing from one to the other, basically trying to catch disinformation or information operations at work. So once they've collected certain data, there's 4 different now, as you can see, red highlighted rectangles that they might pop into. Entities at the top is where we're trying to spot people, places, or organization present within the text. So that is using named entity recognition, geoparsing, very clever technology. We use a lot of that. You then got narratives. Jan also already talked about natural language processing, and that's the core of our technology as well. It's basically us trying to train, usually at the fly, algorithms to spot threat vectors within the language as they occur. COP26, you know, there's all kinds of different kind of state-sponsored activities which were happening, and we're trying to basically teach algorithms to understand what the language looks like from those threat vectors and then find it. Users. So once we start understanding narratives, we normally jump over to users and we start asking of those that have shared particular kind of narratives, who are they? What other messages have they shared? What other account level flags they might have? And at the highest level abstraction, we talk about groups. So when we understand users, we normally say, well, how are they linked to each other? How might they be all working on one narrative and then switching to another narrative? They might be moving from one platform to another. And basically, the principle is that as we use each of these 4 basically technology stacks, if you will, they're doing 2 things. They're either creating new inputs. So we find narratives which we're concerned about. We go back and we collect more data. We find entities we're concerned about within particular narratives. We go back and we collect more data. Users that we think are propagating climate denialist talk. And we go in and collect all their everything they've ever sent, and we realize that they might be talking Ukrainian or Russian or Chinese, you know, a month ago. And then groups. Often there'll be a certain kind of subset within a community which we think are problematic. Again, that might be new data inputs. So we're constantly finding stuff, going back, collecting more data, finding stuff, and then we roll that out into outputs. We can't do anything about information warfare ourselves. We're a bunch of geeky technologists. There are plenty of people who can. So we're often feeding this into either governments or mainly civic society organizations and others that can actually try and get the information taken down. it turns into dashboards, lots of lovely, beautiful, completely incoherent dashboards that no one can actually see what any of these things do. So maybe they're complete nonsense. You have to take my word for it. These are in fact extremely insightful and have delivered lots and lots of value added in terms of data. But the most important thing really is how we roll that out. Really now in elections and on major global issues, climate and sexual reproductive rights conversations, and for society people all over the world. So that's the idea, really. Core technology, try and turn it into some kind of like kind of force multiplier, and like try and like embed it in as many different civic society activists and governmental groups as we can that are actually trying to fight this problem. Because there is barely a single issue now that isn't being touched by concerted and organized attempts to try and manipulate information in ways which are often actually, by the way, nothing to do with disinformation, much more to do with emotions and identity and belonging and things like that. There we go. I ran out of time. Thank you very much. And can I say from London Foo, hello everyone.